Hey, Remington.
What's going on, Matt? How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good on this Tuesday. Is it evening or afternoon?
When
I,
does evening start? I don't actually know.
I feel like if it's past 5, it's evening.
I mean, it's technically still afternoon.
Yeah.
It's always afternoon, even at night.
I'd like somebody's thoughts on this. Maybe we
That's
need to get an
interesting.
expert involved.
Maybe. Anyway, this is the Listen to This Bull live show, the show where you get to ask us a bunch of questions, arbitrary things. I don't care. We prefer ones that actually matter to the insurance restoration industry because we talk about bullshit here. Bullshit in the insurance world and outside of it. On both sides. And we want to talk to you about it. We love talking about bullshit and we like drinking while we do it.
Yeah.
Today,
And it
we've
looks
got a
like
special-
we have a special guest today.
she's a little special.
A little special. She's actually fantastic. Very smart. And I'm excited to bring her on here in a little bit. And since she has the best voice
She does.
in the Midwest, we're going to have her somehow introduce the show.
Let me do the intro and then we'll pull her in. That disclaimer is so true. I know you guys all read it instantly. It was up for so very long. This is just our opinions on stuff. We're idiots, really. At least I am.
I disagree with that comment, but let it slide.
My name is Matt Mahal, and that's Remington Huggins, and this is Sarah Parker. Hi, Sarah.
Sarah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Listen to This Bull podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Love it.
Oh my goodness.
Has anybody ever approached you on being an intro professional voice? I mean, I'm being serious here. That's some good stuff.
They usually
No.
approach her for other things.
For claims adjusting
Claims.
is what he means, everyone.
Obviously. What else would I do?
My I think I told you this before. My mother worked for the CBC, so I believe she did both Francophone and English broadcasting. So my training is thanks to her.
Awesome. She did a great job.
Today I'll be enjoying a night swim. Compliments of one of my students at NCI. This is a fairly light porter.
Thanks, Matt. Is that 12? It's not even 12 ounces, is it? It looks like it's 8.
It's
And I'm
12
not-
ounces.
Is it? That's
My
small.
hands are just huge.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
I literally had to ask somebody how big their hands were after a hail event in Florida. I had a photo of someone at their property had hail 2 to 2.5 inches in size, or it appeared that way. They didn't have a measuring tape on there. And I got to the address and there was zero evidence that hail fell there. So I got her on the phone and I said, that you took the photo at this address? She said, yes. I'm like, all right, do you have really tiny hands? She said, I don't think so. Do you want me to measure them? And I was like, yeah, kind of. Please measure your hand. It was weird. I learned a lot about hail that day. Disc-shaped hail can fall much, much slower.
Disc shaped.
It was flat.
Really?
So even though from the top down it looks like a sphere, and she had to tell me that over the phone.
I'm going to
Interesting
be
stuff.
Googling that later. That's
There wasn't
fascinating.
even any spatter. 2-inch. Blew my mind.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it was. So today we're going to talk about things having to do with mental aptitudes and mental attitudes and other attitudes. I don't know if there are other attitudes.
We could make some up. No one would know. That's kind of the point of our talk today.
There you go.
Make things up. That's the point of our talk.
There you
The
go.
goal here is to help you develop a mindset and change how you think about things in order to approach stuff differently. I think it's a really cool concept. So I don't really know. I have an idea. I think I know where you're going with all this, but really this is how this show works. A little back end for you viewers out there. We really don't do any kind of prep work. We come up with a title and we just let it go. So we have a title.
Send it.
And so I'm really curious to see where Sarah takes us today down this path of mental attitudes.
Well, lovely. Well, I was hoping this could be a little bit of an interactive journey of unlearning, if you will, I guess, is a
journey in your mind.
A journey into unlearning. Yes. And hilarity ensues, apparently. So
sometimes
let's just start. Let's get a base level here. This is a very, very broad topic, and I didn't prepare anything. So we're just going to start with basics, sure, and we're going to go from there.
All right. So what
are
you thinking about when you're thinking about changing the way that you think then?
So first, I want you to envision your mind as if it were a muscle. It needs to be stretched. It needs to be exercised. It needs to be nourished, and it needs to be rested. So just really coming at your mind from that aspect. You are not as smart as you think you are. That's
so true.
I'm not as smart as I think I am. I always tell people, people graciously and very gratefully, they say, you're a great speaker, you have all these things. And I'm like, you just like my delivery. I'm just parroting stuff I learned from my mentors. I didn't make any of this up. I have fantastic mentors. I really, really, really do. Multitude of tudes.
Multitude is a tude.
Multitude of tudes. Hashtag. So really when he's got mayonnaise.
I love the comments from my show. We get the best comments.
It's great. Yes, everyone, please comment as we're going through. It makes it very lively. So just realizing, one, that you are a finite being. You don't know everything. There's a lot to know. Everything that's known and everything that we're doing, we are reactive to. It's very important to realize. So you may think you're really smart, but remember, this is all reactionary. So really, really thinking about where you are in the grand scheme of things. This is getting deep really fast.
I like it.
In life, if you will. So having a proper perspective and relationship of self, I suppose, with the rest of the world. Respectfully, I mean, all of us have mental aptitudes and skills. There's, both of you are very, very talented at things that I'm not so great at. Everyone has skills that they're good at. So just realizing where you're good, where you have opportunities, leveraging that, realizing where you are so that you can learn properly. So that's kind of covers the ability to learn, and then, skills that you're born with and skills you can develop. Then there's the actual knowledge itself. That's where it gets fun. A lot of the stuff that people have been taught about property insurance is just not real.
Could it be described as bullshit?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, good.
The highbrow word for it would be either misinformation or there's high use of something called logical fallacies within the claims process. And we'll break some of those down. You have all run into them. One of my favorites, I'll have to look up the Latin for it, but it's something ad populum, but it's basically the bandwagon fallacy. So essentially, if everyone believes in something, they believe that it's real. If we all were tomorrow to believe together that the sky is purple, then the sky would be purple in our minds. But the truth is different. So a lot of
be changing the definition of the word blue to mean purple.
The earth is flat,
yes,
for example.
Yes. So getting into concepts like this when you're thinking is incredibly helpful, and claims adjusting, helpful.
Do you believe the world is flat? Is that why you brought that up?
I'm bringing it up because everybody hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, did think the world was flat.
Hundreds of years ago is actually accurate. It's surprising, but that's true.
Yep.
Anyway.
So I want to put it, I like to use information such as what Sarah's given us and make it a real life situation of, so this is what Sarah's talking about. Does that make sense? I like doing that.
Right. She's talking about flat earthers.
Ooh, here we go. Applied cognitive I'm going to get a definition up for everyone on
I
that.
want to know who this is. Claims delegates. Does anybody know that name? The name of that company? Who this is?
I did comment them. I commented on a wonderful advertisement, or advert, as we say in Canada, that they had earlier. They're brilliant at marketing, whoever this person is. I know that.
Brilliant. Well, I like those.
We'll find
people.
out before this is over with.
Yeah, he's going to tell us. McCabe.
So I am Googling that. Here.
It's McCabe. You can just ask questions and people answer them.
All right.
You don't have to Google it. It's there.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, shucks.
So there are a lot of going back on the topic of logical fallacies. There's a lot of different ones. The really, really common ones that you're going to hear, like red herring fallacy. I'm sure everyone has heard that one.
I don't think many people on this show have heard specific names for fallacies. If you describe them, I think everybody here would probably understand what it is you're talking about.
There are hundreds if you really get into it, because academia has a lot of time to just come up with lots of stuff, categorize things for us.
I can tell you, I've used the word fallacy in argumentation against insurers before, and it didn't really go that well. I think if you say to someone, maybe there's a use of fallacy. If you say to someone that they're using this fallacy, which
I have used it with an example.
It'll just piss them off. I think that's more of an observation than a fallacy, I guess.
If you use it in claims adjusting, just be aware that it's not very nice. Let's just say that. But basically, like a red herring fallacy is like, hey, look over there. But we were talking about something else, to make it very simple. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Smoke and mirrors kind of a concept.
Yeah, exactly. So
direct your attention to Exhibit B so that we can stop arguing about Exhibit A that I still don't want to answer the questions about.
Exactly. That's actually, there's hundreds. I'll have to link it after.
Yeah. I think they're pretty cool. I've read through them several times on different things, and I think that there's a lot of interesting negotiation tactics you can develop by reading through some of the fallacies that exist there. But the reality is most people that use fallacies don't realize that it's improper or not logical. They recognize only that, like, for example, the one that you gave before, what was the first one you gave?
The bandwagon fallacy.
Bandwagon. Mm-hmm. Everybody believes this, so it must be true. So I'm gonna spout the same information to you that I've heard every single time.
Three trades.
Whatever it might be.
Rule.
Among our industry, the idea that there is no there's no consequence to filing a claim on an act of God occurrence for the policyholder. That's complete garbage. It's bullshit, and it keeps getting perpetrated. So people feel confident or feel better about their own actions, their own unethical behavior in filing frivolous claims. They feel better about it because it's a gray area. Everybody keeps saying that there's some fallacies in my favor, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Did you get that off your chest, Matt?
A little bit. There's some bullshit there.
Hey,
I've been writing this.
If we're going to be calling bullshit, we got to call all bullshit.
Yes, I have gone down some ethical paths in the last few days, just writing some courses that have to do with that are very interesting. But I've come to some realizations about human behavior and how they justify their own actions.
I love that topic too. That's a good one.
Do you?
Yeah.
You're a very psychological person, aren't you?
Yeah. So at 7, I decided that I was going to find the meaning of life. That's the type of person
42.
that I am. No one suggested that to me. It's just how I am naturally. So I like to think about that stuff.
I love it. That's why we have Sarah on the show, guys.
The answer is 42.
But the key is to have optimism with it. Otherwise, you're very bitter. But I'm a very happy and hopeful person.
Yeah,
I have hope
we could
for the
take
best
this show in
good.
so many directions with this title.
I know.
But let's try to stay on at least one track. So you're going down this fallacy path. Where are you going with that?
So when you get into logical fallacies, if you're not the type of person that's really interested in sitting down and reading and looking them up and trying to figure them out, don't worry about that. All you need to really learn is critical thinking to get around them. So I'm the type of person that likes to know why. Whereas some people's personalities are like, okay, that's great, Sarah. Let's just get it done. I don't care why. So let's just skip to the let's get it done part. If you can develop critical thinking, you can basically get around the logical fallacies, the common ones that are used within the claims process. So if I were to make a statement, the questions healthy skepticism, not skepticism for sake of assuming that someone is wrong. There are all kinds of biases. There's different names for them: cognitive bias, there's confirmation bias. And even as a public adjuster, I have to watch out for that one. So I cannot assume that the policy has coverage. I cannot, and I don't want to assume that the insurance company is doing something wrong and that my client is 100% right. You have to apply critical thinking because you are what's called a trier of fact. You are looking at facts. You're trying the facts to hopefully come to a truth. So in doing that, when a statement or a fact is presented to you, you just immediately, with healthy skepticism and setting aside your biases if possible, start asking yourself questions like, where did this information come from? Who presented it? What were their interests possibly in presenting this information? How is it applicable in relation to the other facts at hand? What is the goal here? What are we doing? So it's really just asking yourself those questions, breaking things down. What is the source of this? If a study was, quoted as an example, who made the study? What was the controls? You're really getting into it. What was the interest of that person to do that study in the first place? Exactly. Apply critical thinking. And so to make critical thinking practical, you just ask yourself, why? Just, figure it out.
Without getting yourself caught in a never-ending loop of why, you can turn yourself into a zombie doing that. I've gone down some of those paths before, especially after someone quotes a document. And engineers often will quote another research paper of some kind. And then when you actually go into that research paper and you start reading it, it doesn't really pertain to what the engineer was quoting or the controls. And how it passed any kind of peer review before being published is beyond you. There's just too many. Some of those papers just, let's just say the scientific method is lost upon some people.
There is such a thing as having a fallacy of essentially authority bias. So, we're trained from have you guys ever heard the story of the elephant and the chain from Asia?
I want to hear it.
And the chain? No.
So it's a very common story in like Thailand, Vietnam, India, all in that area of the world. When it's practical. It's something that they do. They use elephants for essentially pack animals doing work, things like that, just like we have horses or, draft cattle, things like that. But when they're babies, they chain them to a little stick. And when they're a baby, they're not strong enough to move it and they're not strong enough to escape. When they're in adulthood, they are strong enough to escape. They can break that chain. But they've been conditioned since they were a child to believe that they cannot. They're essentially broken. Their mind is broken into that until someone wakes you up or you can free yourself, switching back to humans. So it's really important to really question everything that you've been taught, again, with healthy, loving skepticism, not to assume that it's wrong and not to assume that it's right. Just reevaluate it. Even if it's something that you view as positive or right, sometimes that stuff isn't always right. When it comes to claims, even. So it's really important to break that stuff down.
I love it. I love it.
You know, you're a unique guest, Sarah. You make me ponder.
Now, to healthily ponder, because like I said, there's two types of people. There's the type of people that are, Matt is one of them. I'm definitely one of them. I won't speak to Remy because I'm not quite sure. Remy is a deep thinker. I know that. Very intelligent, deep thinker. But we can go on the why, but we jump over to the execution, jump over to the goal, stay focused on the goal. So people that will have a little bit of an easier time with the execution of critical thinking are the people that are like, we're getting the claim approved. Whereas I'm like, what is the meaning of insurance? You know what I mean? Like, I got to reel myself in. So
That's awesome.
So you have to remember when you are applying critical thinking, keep the goal in mind. Is there coverage or is there not?
Yeah, that's actually something that I go into in my public adjuster 101 classes. Sometimes it's easy to go down some rabbit holes. I definitely have gone down plenty of rabbit holes. Mm-hmm. Sarah's going down friggin' underwriting rabbit holes these days. So there's plenty of rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Do you really need to know that?
My book deliveries right now. It's an interesting journey. I don't know. It's interesting. So with, again, keeping a goal in mind. So for me, if I'm working for a client, my goal is to find out if there is coverage for my client or not. Within my professional pursuits and professional education, that's where I let myself, still with a goal in mind though, that's where I let myself have a little bit more leeway with going into the rabbit hole, so to speak. But you still have to have a goal. Otherwise, you don't really, it doesn't come to fruition. Nothing happens.
One of the biggest benefits of being an educator is being able to go down those rabbit holes in an attempt to find out why, or to find, I don't know, justification for some of the things that you're spouting or teaching someone to do. And you find some of these things and it's amazing. And then you find out that you were wrong about something for years, but oh no, it's beautiful. But one of the coolest things, and I've heard this before, but I didn't know it. You can hear things and understand that might be true, but until you actually experience those things, it's hard for you to know. You can, until you have children, you don't know the depth of love you might have for a tiny person. But you might know that people love their kids. I knew that people that teach often say that they make connections that they never would have otherwise. I've made connections in the middle of teaching classes so many times now that I just out of nowhere, just like, and that's why this, and this, and I could play it off as if I knew it the whole time. I could keep going like, freaking brilliant. You guys know it. I know it. Let's just keep moving.
You're too honest for that.
But I don't, because I am too honest.
You're too honest.
Well.
You'd be like, oh, yeah. You can't play that off.
I can't. I suck at being
I believe that that's what makes professional success, though. That is professional excellence, what you just explained to me. You have to know. Remember in the beginning we started, you don't know everything. You might be wrong. You have to be open to that. What you just explained is absolute professional excellence. You have to be prepared that you may be really wrong about something and publicly own that. I try my very best to do that. And teaching others is also what elevates you and elevates them and elevates the industry. It elevates everything. So when you are teaching someone else, because if you can't explain something in a simple manner, that's one thing to be able to explain something eloquently. That's not a bad thing. But in order to properly teach someone, you have to, when I was like, hey, look over there, I was like, that's that logical fallacy. That really is a beautiful thing because it really affirms if you really know what you're talking about or not, if you really have facts to back it up. If
Right.
you're spewing logical fallacies yourself and didn't know. But yeah, and the humility piece to that is important as well. If you're wrong, you own up to it. Even in claims handling, if I make a mistake with an adjuster, I'd be like, I made a mistake. Here's the correct information, so.
That's one of the best freaking tactics in the world anyway. If you can do that in front of an adjuster and specify, man, you're right, man. Thank you. I honestly, I was wrong.
Absolutely.
You were definitely right about that one. We'll move on to the next point. I can see it. Good call. That will elevate you in their minds tremendously that you are a reasonable and fair individual and not just there to be a greedy public adjuster. And that's how they think it's public adjusters. Ugh.
Matt, there's more attorney jokes than PA jokes out there. Okay, so
I follow your attorney accounts on Instagram. I see your jokes. Wow, you guys are very professional on the outside, but your jokes are out of control. Love you. Oh man.
Well, hey, when I, like you say, the fallacies and stuff, like I deal with it a lot in briefs. If there's like a motion for summary judgment or something, defense counsel, they are professionals at cherry picking language out of case law, such as claim denied. And then you're like, on cosmetic damage, claim denied. And they'll just put claim denied in the brief and have the case law behind it. Well, you have to actually go and look at the case and realize that they're just giving the history of the claim where it was denied initially, but they're actually completely overturning the denial in the Court of Appeals. Like, I'm telling you, it happens almost in every single brief.
So is there a fallacy for just not finishing your own research before spouting the information that you think that you...
Yeah,
I'd have to look it up, but there's a specific one for that.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going into that specific case and finding exactly what they need to support their position, that's just a confirmation bias in itself. If you're always looking for something that just confirms your own beliefs already, then you're looking for information. That's a confirmation bias in itself.
And you must do these things because it is right, not because it is easy. It's not easy. It's harder. It's more painful. It's more emotionally painful. It's not enjoyable. You will lose clients for doing the right thing at times, but you have to do it because it's the right thing to do.
100%. 100%. And I don't care who you are in this profession, contractor, public adjuster, or attorney, you will be faced with that situation. Do what's right. Seriously.
I have no side. I do represent the interests of my client, but I also can only use truth and facts. So,
there you go. Matt, what are you looking at? I can tell you are just knee deep.
He is going to be reading a lot. I can tell. Matt, I can send you some ebooks. I actually have a book on how to do critical thinking. It's got lots of little guides and stuff on it. There's a whole institute of critical thinking. It's quite fascinating.
An institute of critical thinking.
There's an institute for anything, actually. If you can think of it, there's probably one out there.
There's a tit-toot for everything.
Yes.
Matt, you opened up this broadcast with how to change your thinking. Do you remember that question? It seems like that was chapters ago, but I want to know how you change your thinking.
Me?
Yeah, the guy who asked the question.
I find myself to always be open to changing my opinion and my thought on stuff. I tend to like people that are open to a differing opinion. I like to have arguments with people that you could actually win an argument with, and that have a possibility of actually swaying you back because they give logical, reasonable arguments, not emotional crap where they just get pissed off at you and say something that has nothing to do with the actual argument. I enjoy arguments with Frank Dalton, for example, because he'll actually give me some information that could end up swaying me. I've been swayed by his opinion on things, and I have changed his mind on many things as well.
And everybody out there, Frank Dalton is the owner of Coastal Claims in New Smyrna. Just so everybody knows. There you
go. There's not that many people out there that actually go into an argument open to change their own opinion. But I don't know how. I don't know if I've changed the way I think at all, though. Maybe the title of this show is a little bit of a misnomer, but if you go down a critical thinking institute, maybe they can teach you how to think differently. Just ask a bunch of why questions. So what if you're already doing that? What if you're not doing that? I guess if you're not doing that, you should start. Why did they say that? I find that often you can read between the lines on what people say. They might say something and you could think, why did they say that? I'll give you an example. There's an insurance carrier that is telling people that they did a repairability test wrong because they lifted the shingles more than 2 inches. What they're not saying is something very important, but they're saying 2 inches. They lifted more than 2 inches. There isn't any documentation anywhere that says anything about lifting a shingle less than 2 inches in order to be able to make repairs. The only thing that it could be, the only reason that could exist in that is that they're talking about the use of a specific third-party DIY tool, a roof snake. Piece of shit, in my opinion, by the way.
I've never used one.
Garbage tool. I've got a few videos on it if you guys are curious about that. But when they say...
Go check it out. If you haven't checked it out, go check out those videos. If you're going to check out any of Matt's videos, that's all I got to say.
It's garbage, but they're not saying anything about it. They're just saying that you lifted more than 2 inches. That's the only tool that I'm aware of where they might have said 2 inches is the maximum, and it has to do with the length of the nail versus the length of the tool head. But you end up having to trade impact damage for creasing. So pick one or the other. You're getting one or the other. Anyway,
that brings to mind two very common ones that I read often. I just did a presentation, couple of different presentations at the GAF Upper Midwest Expo last week. And my presentation, my breakout one, my solo one was, it was, myth versus fact, busting common property insurance myths. And one of my favorite parts of that, so you have a room full of people. And I said, raise your hand if you've ever had a problem with ordinance and law versus minimum building code compliance. Lots of hands go up, right? Yeah, everyone. Then I said, who argues that successfully or semi-successfully or a little bit? A lot of hands still go up. And I said, who can give me a definition of ordinance and law? No one raised their hand. And I was like, that's exactly. And I wasn't laughing at them. I was illustrating that's part of critical thinking. If you don't even know what you are arguing for, it makes it a lot harder to argue for it.
That's true. Some of the language in some of those policies for ordinance and law is very misleading anyway.
It can be a nightmare to go through depending on the wording anyway, because then it's like, okay, well, nothing's covered. Everything's covered.
There's one policy
not quite sure here.
Is missing a comma. I don't want to say who it is just because I disclaimer at the beginning. We don't need any kind of issue, but there are in contract law, the placement of commas and semicolons matters, especially in the list of things. If there's a comma, it designates a new listed item. If there isn't a comma, and they say the word this or this or this and this, and then they put a comma after that and they continue the list, then the thing on both sides of the or both sides of the and is really just redescribing itself. It's describing the same item in two different ways. You can, instead of reading the word or, you could say, in other words, this. And so there's some language in some of these. One of them says for complying with local building codes or for the increased cost caused by an enforcement of a local law or ordinance. But there wasn't a comma. So even though it says complying with building codes, which is definitely what ordinance and law is not really supposed to be for, there wasn't a comma after that or, so they're just redescribing the same item, and the same item is still an increased cost associated with an enforcement. So what is an increased cost? Increased cost is something that is outside the normal course of construction, or something that doesn't already exist on that particular roof, because if you can't remove anything and replace it with like kind of quality because there's nothing that you're removing, then you have an increased cost. There's no like kind of quality to pay it with.
That is a fantastic example. Another one is the brittle test. Serenity now. So, all right, brittle test, ladies and gentlemen. Those are often quoted in engineering reports and other third-party experts. They've even seen one where they quoted an ASTM brittle test, and I'm just like, all right, this is why you apply critical thinking. So there are ASTM brittle tests. However, they are specifically for pre-consumer testing for standards of the product before it's shipped out for purchase to make sure that it was manufactured properly. And it's done in set scientific conditions.
There aren't any for asphalt shingles. That's for damn sure.
There aren't any for shingles, and there are for siding, but it's not for a material that's been installed, and we don't know what variables it's not for that. It's to make sure that the product you're shipping out is not complete shit. That's all. It's to make sure you're buying something that does what it's supposed to do. It has nothing to do with post-consumer installed products. That's one of the things that gets me upset. Not many things do. That gets me upset.
And Sarah, people wouldn't even know that unless they dive into it and do the research on when this was tested, everything. I mean, seriously, they would have no idea that, oh, you can use the same brittle test that they use before they even ship out these shingles on a 10-year-old roof that's been baking in South Florida, I mean,
it's actually for siding on asphalt shingles.
Or the idea that it would take 1 inch hail or greater to cause damage to a sound asphalt shingle when the research stopped at 11 years old.
What size of hail, what density, what angle?
What if it's 15 years old? The research paper stopped at 11.
There's so many variables that my mind.
Why do we use the same data for older roofs?
And on the flip side, this is not to be arbitrary to anyone watching who has a bias against people like myself that might have a public adjusting license. Please be aware that I don't use the same thing for absurd situations. So if there is a bird that pecked one shingle, I am not trying to tell the insurance company that they need to replace the entire roof. So remember, within ethics and reason.
That's the key there. It's reasonable. Yes. Reasonability matters in an insurance policy. There is a spirit of the law built into insurance policies. In fact, some states even specify that in their statutes, that the intention of the policy is to be followed and to the benefit of the policyholder at all times. So there is a spirit of the law, kind of a statute, and written into many states for insurance policies, and I think that's really interesting.
Fascinating.
It is, because that's not usual for contracts, is it?
No, and I think a big thing too is when people are looking at this information, they didn't get Public Adjuster 101. They didn't get Law 101, right? And basically, the only thing that you need to know when you're starting to learn on this journey is that a policyholder is a claimant. A policyholder has duties after loss. A lot of those duties after loss are not always done. So it's not always bad faith, everyone who likes to scream that, when the carrier makes a settlement offer because your own client didn't do what they're supposed to do, set forth their amount of the loss. So you need to know, if you're a policyholder, you are a claimant, you have duties after loss. There are fair claims handling statutes. There is burden of proof that shifts when different things happen throughout the process. So you really need to have that basis of knowledge before you jump into this. If you're going to argue for O&L, you need to be able to know what it is, how to explain it, or at least know how to read a policy, because they really do differ through
Hey,
policies.
Remington,
So
how many times have you been told that the claim is just filled with bad faith? There's so much bad faith on this case.
it's all
How
bad
many times have
faith.
you been told that?
Bad faith.
I hear it a ton.
So many people are going to get mad at me too for that. It's not all
That's
bad
true.
faith. It's not.
It's
Well,
not. I agree with Sarah.
At least not provable bad faith. That's for sure.
I agree with Sarah, and Matt knows this just because, I mean, we've been.
We've had to have a serious talk. Why? I literally had to say, Remington, if I'm ever wrong, I want you to just tell me. Just tell me if I'm wrong.
I rarely throw the term bad faith around when I'm seriously talking to somebody. I mean, I very, very rarely, because I do not like crying wolf. I do not play that game. When I file a lawsuit, is there bad faith count in it? Of course. Yes, there is, because I'm supposed to, but I'm not at 100% times there's bad faith in every claim. There's absolutely not. Or like Matt said, it's very hard to prove it. And it is. It matters what state you're in, but it is.
Do you file for bad faith every time you file a lawsuit, though?
Do I?
Yeah.
If I have the proper pre-requirements to do so, yes. Like demand that it needed to expire per statute, yes.
Okay, so then bad faith on most of your cases then would have bad faith, right?
In the lawsuits? You're saying as a count? Yes, as a count for sure. Because guess what? When you file a lawsuit and you get into the discovery phase, and then you get the claims handling file and you see some things that you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe they did this. Yeah. Guess what? Now I can still pursue the bad faith versus not having that as an avenue of recovery for my client. So if I'm able to put it in there, put it in there.
I got you.
And when we say that it's not everything is bad faith, we're not saying that there isn't effery in the process at times. We're not saying that there isn't manipulation of things or things like that. We're saying bad faith is a very specific thing within law. Sure. And I cannot give that definition. I'm not an attorney. Remington is going to be the best person for that. But it's based on your state. It's a very specific thing. So you can have bad faith, you can have fraud, you can have violating, for your state's fair claims handling statutes, if there are any. And then, of course, violating the insuring agreement itself. So there's different definitions to be aware of. So not everything is bad faith, but you have to know why we're saying that. Again, use critical thinking.
When you file a lawsuit, though, that's before you have discovery. So you might not know if there's bad faith or not. You might suspect bad faith, and you can file a lawsuit against suspected activities without having all of the evidence in your favor at that moment. Is that right?
If you satisfy the prerequisites for doing so, yes, you can. And let me say this. For instance, Sarah brought up fraud. If you plead fraud in a complaint, file it against an insurance carrier, you have to specifically plead it, which means that you have to give all of the details regarding the fraud count. Okay, versus a breach of contract or even a bad faith count where you don't have to plead all these specifics. And then as litigation proceeds and discovery happens, before you go to trial, that's where the insurance carriers will kick out the bad faith count. They'll file a motion with the court saying there is no bad faith in this case. You have to kick it out. And that's when the judge, we call it summary judgment, and that's when the judge makes a decision on kicking out the bad faith count, saying that is not going to go to the jury. Only the breach of contract claim on the insurance policy is going to be heard by the jury. That is, and I like to dumb things down because literally I could write a book about it, but that's just, the 30-second brief on how that works.
That's beautiful. That's
Is
very
there a
helpful.
difference between fraud and bad faith?
Yes.
If a carrier performs bad faith, is that not a form of fraud?
Fraud is when you pretty much you lie to somebody and that person has to reasonably rely upon that lie, which to their detriment affects them and harms them. Okay. Versus bad faith, where somebody's saying, you know what, this roof is damaged. I think it was damaged. It was damaged from the storm. I'm just not going to pay it. There's a difference because they're not reasonably relying upon that adjuster's comments and then to their detriment, and that's going to harm them. Does that make sense? Somebody has to rely on a comment for it to be fraud. Oh, I'm a licensed attorney. Well, I'm going to hire this guy. Like it's a lie, even though he's not a licensed attorney.
Like
you're good with him.
detrimental reliance, which is
Exactly.
another one
That's
people
what I
throw
would
out
have
there
thought
all
the
the
other
time,
thing
but don't
was.
know what it means.
Maybe I don't know what fraud is.
It's when you falsely believe somebody's comments and it harms you. How about that?
So that's fraud. So if you're filing suit, then you don't necessarily believe them, right? But if the policy is not being paid because the carrier is acting in bad faith, then the carrier is defrauding the policyholder of funds that are owed to them. I think I might have the definition of fraud wrong in my head.
You have to have like Sarah said, a detrimental reliance upon what you are lying about. Okay. And you have to be knowingly lying about it.
So if the carrier is knowingly lying, which is a form of bad faith, so maybe some bad faith is fraud, at least.
Yeah, no, it could be intertwined, but there is a
Okay.
difference. There is a difference. And I want to be clear, disclaimer, bad faith in every state is different. So I want to be fair about that as well.
Sure.
I don't know what it is in Montana, but I know the gist of all the states. I'm in 7 states right now in federal court. Like I get the idea, but I just want to make that disclaimer.
Would have liked to have visited Montana.
Montana. Yeah. Does that make sense though, Matt? The difference between fraud and bad faith in the sense, and they can certainly be intertwined. They certainly can, but it's when somebody.
I think the issue that I have more is the fact that bad faith is different from so many states. That Georgia, for example, it's a frivolous disregard for the rules. But in many states, you could just say that they violated one of the Unfair Claims Settlement Practices Act items, and that's bad faith.
Hey, here's an example that I had a case in which fraud and bad faith was in the complaint. Okay. The adjusters meet the public adjuster on site. They're looking at siding on this house. The policyholder was outside as well. The field adjuster for the insurance carrier, I'm not going to name them, said, oh, all this siding is bought. We're going to buy this. Go ahead and replace it. Okay.
Okay.
He gets in his car 10 minutes later and writes notes that this is not getting bought. However, the homeowner the next day hires a contractor and comes out of pocket $35,000. They relied on those comments that he knew he wasn't going to fulfill, and therefore the homeowner was damaged because now they're out of pocket $35K.
So that's detrimental reliance. I'm familiar with that. Is detrimental reliance then fraud, I guess?
It's an element of fraud. Yep.
I have some research to do on fraud.
Consequence. You know who you should talk to about that is the American Policyholder Association. They have that. They have some great
I've actually sat through a few of his seminars, and I've taken a lot of notes on what actually is fraud a few times. And I remember it surprising me, and I don't remember specifically what I took notes about, but I remember it surprising me. And I remember thinking, I've been wrong about this, and I need to adapt that. And here I am, still not knowing what it is, because it takes me a few times for it to sink in. This noggin has a very strong gait.
It's human. It's a human brain. It goes back to the beginning. Sometimes it takes us a bit to understand things.
Matt, here's the black law definition of fraud. It's 6 different elements that you have to apply to a fact scenario, if you will.
Okay.
Pattern. Number one, you made a claim to someone else. The claim was not true. You knew at the time that the claim was false, and you made it anyway and recklessly. You made that claim because you wanted the other party to rely on it in some fashion. Number five, they did rely on your claim, not knowing it was false. And then number six, as a result, they suffered some sort of harm.
So there is an intent to deceive.
Yeah, like
implied with fraud. So if you intended to deceive someone in such a way that it actually damaged them financially or physically in some way.
Yep. There you go. So
interesting. It's basically gaslighting.
There you go. Sure.
I always said that because my kids keep talking about gaslighting lately. It's the next meme. I gotta change the lighting in my studio. I look like I'm a freaking ghost right now.
I was just thinking I need more lighting. I should turn up my ring light.
I am not licensed in Idaho. I am not licensed in Idaho. I would love to be. Let me go out there and enjoy the West, but I am not licensed. I can, however, send me a message and I could probably connect you with an attorney who does first party in Idaho.
This is how simple my brain is. Someone says Idaho, and my immediate thought is potatoes.
I mean,
it's actually a really beautiful state.
I bet it is.
It's gorgeous.
I bet it smells like potatoes.
One thing both of you touched on, which is fantastic. Conditioning. Conditioning is part of, I'll let you get to that. Are you licensed in Virginia?
No, I am not. I'm not licensed in Virginia.
Why don't you just tell them where you're licensed?
I am licensed in Georgia and Florida, and I am currently actively pursuing Tennessee. However, I can work in different states through the ProHawk VC vehicle. That's why I'm in 7 different states right now. But
it's a hell of a car.
Yeah, it is. It is. I want to hear Sarah's conditioning explanation.
Yeah, this is probably good. We'll get back on track right now.
This one is really cool. So, as you are all aware, and there are, oh my. So, as you are all aware, there is billions of dollars that goes into insurer advertising, stadiums, commercials, all kinds of things. Charity, it's a really big one. So, in this billions of dollars of advertising, there's a lot of conditioning. The obvious stuff that's in there is you either have fear or humor. So emotions are a bitch. They will screw over your thinking faster than everything. So part of critical thinking is you set aside your feelings. Really set those things aside. They're not useful.
Can I pause you there for a second?
Mm-hmm.
I find that if you're desperate, if you need the results to be in your favor badly in order to maybe pay you enough to survive, then you're going to be emotional whether you try to be or not, or whether you try to remove that or not. If you can get to the point where you are not desperate for that particular claim to be a winner, you will actually approach the claim better because you have the ability to use critical thinking in those situations.
Because your mind is not under stress. So when you're under stress, your body actually produces stress hormones that shut down your brain. It literally shuts your brain down.
I remember when I hit the point as a public adjuster that I really didn't care specifically which claims we won. I just knew that we had to win a certain percentage of the claims that we took on, and how that changed how well I argued certain claims. It is palpable, the difference that you have. Palpable. That's a word I learned from Shakespeare. I definitely speak way up here, and I shouldn't when I'm talking to people sometimes.
Well, maybe it's a good thing though,
maybe it's
because
Sarah's making me say palpable.
When you assume that someone can understand what you're talking about, yet remain humble and accessible, they will raise to that level with you, and it's a beautiful thing. People are capable. People are intelligent.
I appreciate that.
And if you're humble and open and welcoming, then they will be happy to ask you, what does palpable mean? And then you can tell them. And then you both know.
Did you go to from early PA days when you needed to win all these claims? Did you have that moment where you realized there was a difference?
For me, it was a little bit different. It was more the injustice got me upset.
Sure.
And when you are angry, when you are scared, any emotions in general, but especially anything that produces stress and the hormones associated with that, really genuinely, there are hormones in your body that shut down your cognitive abilities. It's just science.
So maybe for you, it was the moment when you became disillusioned enough to realize that all this bullshit is systemic, and that you cannot save everyone. Maybe that was the moment when you realized, because you can't save everyone, you can let the stress go a little bit on each one.
That is a thing. That is a huge thing. I don't know about attorneys. I don't know about contractors. I can speak from my experience. I did go through a very heavy period of disillusionment. When you find out what you think is supposed to be right does not happen on a very large scale, and there's nothing that you can do about it. There is, though. There is. But you do go through it as one little person. Little Sarah cannot change the world on her own.
Tiny Sarah.
Little Sarah.
Is that what you faced, where you came to that conclusion?
It was. There's some other things to it that I can't say here, but that had nothing to do with me, but more of just seeing the structure of how everything happens and who works at the Department of Insurance and why the complaints don't go anywhere. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's no accusations here. It's just there are patterns and there are things that you notice that break your heart. And if you're very, I'm a person that is absolutely in love with passion about doing the right thing. And I'm in love with altruism. I get drunk on altruism, I suppose. I don't know. I love it. I love helping people. So when I run into that injustice that I'm just like, the people that are supposed to be doing this are not doing this, that kind of thing. I went through a very, very heavy period of disillusionment, but you get to the point where you go, well, I can still control myself and I can help others to act ethically and think properly in a way that eventually lots of great things are going to happen. It's just not going to be tomorrow.
I started this whole Listen to This Bull channel at the time when I was just getting so disillusioned as to thinking that there's right and there's wrong, and that most people are going to do the right thing. I find that the people that are in the trenches are doing the right thing, or at least as best they can. They're doing everything they can. They're justifying their actions in that way too. Even if there is some ethical behaviors that they are exhibiting that are go against my moral code. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm definitely not perfect, but I feel there's the only way to change the literal diabolical behavior of large corporations at times is to have a voice. And that was a decision that I made in order to start listening to this bull.
It's working.
It's
working.
We're getting there slowly. If you guys could all take the moment to subscribe, that'd be great, because there's not nearly enough subscribers to really have a voice.
And hit the bell. Subscribe and hit the bell on YouTube.
The bell.
So that you get alerted. There's a little bell on YouTube.
Hit that.
If you get alerted,
bell.
You get a push notification.
Cool. There you go. Ava Shields just had a comment up earlier, and I agree to that. And I know she's she listens. She's a great public adjuster in Georgia. I'm sure she's licensed in other states as well. But shout out to Ava.
That's fantastic. Absolute fantastic advice. Absolutely.
Her dad is an excellent engineer, by the way.
Yep.
That's interesting. I wish we had more time to talk about that. Great advice and knowledge. Cool. I'm glad you guys could hang with us. Like, I was worried this topic would be a bit much, but
I feel like this topic
you know,
needs
like I
4 more
said, if you
episodes.
assume and you know that people have the ability to get on that level with you, look at you guys. You're here with us.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do this.
Here's I want to give it just a 10-second of how sometimes it helps me so well. Like you get so caught up in work, you're hustling and you're stressed out and you're trying to get claims paid and all this good stuff. Matt started the conversation with how to change your thinking. This is what I do sometimes. Well, every time I do it, it works. But if you're by the ocean, if you're by the mountains or just the lake or anything, just go out and just take a look at it. And just know that your problem or what's going on in your life is truly minuscule compared to the world. And that's going to be there a lot longer than you are. And take a deep breath. And to me, it helps me out. It really does. Truly. Like, it's like, wow. Like I look at the ocean. I'm like, my problems don't mean anything. Yeah. I mean, seriously. And so I just want to throw that out there of how I change my thinking sometimes. So I need to do that. But,
yeah, you're doing good for the sake of doing good, not for the outcome. And knowing that you're a small part of something very beautiful and very big, and you can have an impact, but the weight of the world is not on your shoulders to change it.
There you go.
It feels like that sometimes, but I think Remington's right. For me, I have to turn off my emails. If I don't have to answer an email in a day, things are so much better.
Yes. And being in community too is very important. So if you are on your lonesome, you start to succumb to just that. If you are what you eat, you are absolutely what you read, what you see, and what you hear. So in your workday, if you have 8 hours of just complete insanity and whatever you're dealing with in your work, and you don't have community like this to check in and just have those, and also just completely get out of work as well.
Run away.
You don't have a touchstone on reality. You start to get sucked into it. So.
Can I bring you back on and we can talk about that? I know you wrote some articles on just getting completely burnt out, basically just fatigue.
Compassion fatigue.
Fatigue. I'd love to go into that with you. There's plenty of people that have. Actually, we went into that with you the last time, but it's such a big topic.
Everybody, contractors, adjusters, public adjusters, everybody has it. If you are dealing with claims, you have experienced it.
But Matt, I don't know if you, we talked about it, and then I think it was like a week or two later, that's when Sarah published the article. I think it was the end of February. So I would like to do and have a conversation about it, because I reread the article this week, actually, because I just wanted to touch on it, and it's fabulous. I think, hey, if we can, let's put it in the comment box so anybody else can read that.
Sure.
Awesome.
I have it right here, and I'll post it. But I think, Matt, you can post it in the comment box for sure. So let's do that.
Awesome.
I'm going to copy paste what you put in there into it. Yeah.
There you go.
Well, this has been lovely. This has been a lovely chat.
Absolutely.
It's a great way to end my day. Thank you, guys.
Me as well. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
You're awesome.
Appreciate you.
You let me peel back the layers in my brain. I love it.
It's kind of like stepping back from it all a bit and realize, because we're always like right here with it. Step back, chill out.
Musa.
Yeah.
This is one of those moments when Remington reveals that his brain has layers, which is totally one of those reptilian type deals. You're one of the reptiles, aren't you? I'm on to you, sir.
Maybe we need to do an industry wellness retreat where we
just say fuck off to all our claims and just go somewhere else for a while. That sounds great, by the way. I don't care if I see anybody there. That would be fabulous.
The detachment, the healing, and then you can go home or go back to your team with resources to build into your HR, and no one burns out.
There you
go. Learn a new drink mix. Yeah.
Sarah, if something like that comes up, let me know.
I mean, we'll just make it happen. How about that? We'll make it happen.
I'm down.
Cool. All right, Sarah. Awesome. Thank you for being on.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
I kicked her off.
She's awesome, man.
She really is.
She's great.
It really is.
Seriously, guys, everybody in this industry, I don't care. If you're an insurance adjuster, for a desk adjuster for State Farm, I don't care. Read that article. It's good stuff. You will pull little nuggets from it. I promise.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's been there, especially if you truly are doing your best to do what's right and you see atrocities anyway, and there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of your own behaviors in the article and understand it a little bit better. And if you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it a little bit better, sometimes you can help avoid getting to that point again. So it's a fantastic article. Sarah always makes me think about stuff. Every time I get on the phone with her, I feel like I act like an idiot, and she's obviously highly intelligent. So I really enjoy the conversations with her, but at the same time, I get silent through most of it. She's making me think about stuff. So I feel really stupid. She's one of those people that makes me feel stupid. I think that's a huge compliment.
You for you, Matt. She accepts you for you. All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank God somebody does. I got my wife and I got Sarah.
That's Sarah. And one of my kids. That's about it. Oh man, great show. Hey, let's have Sarah on and let's hit on that her article.
I think that's a good topic.
Let's do that. I think it'd be good. Idea. All right.
So I don't remember who's on next week.
It's all right.
Sorry. I'll post something about it next week, 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Eastern time. For all of you that think 6 p.m. Central, I don't know why you started thinking that. It's Eastern. It's always been Eastern. It's Eastern time. So we will see you guys next Tuesday at 6 p.m. just like every other Tuesday. It's always on Tuesday. It's always at 6 p.m. and it's live. And as long as I'm not riding a scooter, then we'll actually have the whole show. It'll be fine. I'll see you guys next week.
Have a good one, guys. Have a good evening.
See you later, Robbie.
Past 5. It's an evening.